The sun was out a little while ago. I don't know. Spring, summer is almost here. And we're back in your gorgeous house. I'm so enjoying this. I was just saying, I so look forward to this continued discussion, like every single week. And what I love is right now is that we had some other things that we had taped, but because of that. No, we could be like David's leaving. No, but we could say, you know what?
And that's my life. That's life.
That's a life. It's fine.
That's
it's
what happens when you marry someone who loves cars. He cuts the muffler off to make it sound as if there's an airplane in your garage.
Out, but we're not going to cut that out. It's all good.
Yeah.
If we're at my house, we just hear my dog barking. But I was like, I don't think I would ever say thank you, Trudeau, in my life. That is the only political thing I'm going to say today. But I would say they gave us a lot to talk about.
Yes.
So we decided to bump everything that we had filmed up until now and put it for later weeks and talk about the new federal budget, which I will quote Warren Kinsella, who I love, who said that he thought this was a nail in the Liberal coffin. But I don't know. And I'm not just saying that as a conservative.
I don't know.
We're going to have a healthy debate today because Natalka likes the budget. And I just think it's good old smoke and mirrors.
Oh, okay. Let's caveat for 1 second. The budget and the planning, I actually went through it. It was quite painful, quite long. There's a lot of complexity for any of this to actually work. And we're going to dig into that today. Let's first start.
There is. And I think that's what I really want to discuss.
Tons of
and
complexity.
Natalka will do a much better job of it than I do. But I'll give an example of the complexity and what I mean when I say smoke and mirrors is, after the budget is announced, I even saw a mortgage broker post and we're going to touch on this, 30-year amortization, and we can take more out of the RESP. And I was like, okay, but look at there's always that fine print. My husband even sent to me, he was like, oh, look, they're giving $40,000 towards another dwelling within another unit. I've had a long day, spring season, $40,000 towards creating another, a senior suite or another unit or basement apartment to create density. Okay. Here's the a $40,000 low interest loan.
Correct. These are
I don't
loans.
need your money. What?
Yes.
So you have to pay it back? Anyway, yes, go ahead. We had buckets. And I'm going all over the place. Sorry, we have so much to talk about.
I love this because you actually read the details and not the headlines, which is what people need to understand and why they should call you. Anyway, that's my pitch for Rachel today.
Yes, there you go.
So the first thing I want to talk about is okay, why are we excited? Well, because there's a lot to talk about. Why? Because there's a lot of housing that took the headlines when it came to this particular budget.
It was front and center.
It was.
For sure, it was.
And
why?
Yeah.
Because they want to buy the young people's votes, because it is becoming more and more unaffordable for most people to become homeowners. And that's really depressing. And I feel for all of them out there. I really do. I've been doing this a long time, and this is one of the first times I will say there will be a generation that will not have an easy time and may not be able to buy homes because it's becoming completely unaffordable.
Yeah, to go by the numbers, 8.3% increase in inflation for rent. Okay, that is a record since the 1980s. Not to say, that's crappy and that's hard, but mortgages, 25% year-over-year growth. So, of course, it's unaffordable.
And what was the number that was just posted about the decline in first-time buyers since 2016? It was 20-30%.
I'm not surprised. We see some of the data shows that if you already own a home, you're likely to be someone who's going to buy the next home and is doing most of the shopping. We did talk about some ways for some home buyers can get into the market, but let's talk a little bit about how the government has broken up the budget. So I see it in three ways, one of which we're going to talk about later on. Yeah. Three things. First of all is about supply. So he's trying to increase supply. The second piece was trying to get buyers to be able to buy, first-time home buyers specifically. And then finally one where it has to do with tenants. So let's start with the supply side, right? Okay, so first of all, money is being allocated. So there's a couple billions of dollars and they're going to be allocated in different ways. One of which is money that is going to go to builders to build specific purpose, which is rentals. That is not new, by the way. That already exists. Of that program, it's existed since 2017. I think we meaning builders, have only tapped into that funding and they've built about 30,000 new rentals. It's not a real popular approach to building. So that's one.
Right. Well, it's true when you think about rentals.
So 30,000 since 2000, I think since 2017.
So if you think about the majority of the rental buildings that were built in, let's just say the GTA, they were all basically built like in the 60s or 70s. And I have this conversation with people all the time is they have no air conditioning. You're talking about coin laundry. These are old buildings.
Yes.
That's the reality of it.
Yes.
Right? So how is he going to come up with, how is that money actually going to deliver on the rental supply when we'll talk about how the capital gains was increased by them as well and I actually thought it was only for corps. I even read the fine print wrong, but it's also for individuals and how that's going to cut supply.
So on the tax side, very true. On the tax side, he's also increasing the capital cost allowance so that builders that are building like apartments, for example, can reduce their overall tax burdens. Yes. So there's a little bit of that lever there as well. Is that really going to offset the capital gains? I don't know.
Except that there's provincial and city level taxes. I think the last percentage I heard was 37% of total cost to builders is taxes.
Oh yeah. So what he's
just to put a shovel in the ground.
So what also Trudeau's proposing is that he's going to give provincial. This is the one that I find most complicated. He's saying, okay, I'm going to give the provinces a whole whack of dough to start building more homes, but the money I'm giving you is strings attached, meaning that you have to do certain things, provinces and then municipalities, and things like increase density, remove red tape. Build where there's
infrastructure.
Yes, exactly. Oh, infrastructure is also, that's part of the supply. Build on subway lines, for example. Remove the requirement for there to be parking spots. Like basically saying, look, we're going to give you this money, province and municipalities as well, but you've got to basically get rid of the red tape in the process. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see if that will actually stimulate additional growth. Now, the problem is municipalities and provinces don't like stuff like that. I bet you there's going to be a bit of a war as to whether or not that actually is going to be implemented. Now, here's the last one that I thought fascinating. Postal
trying to
office.
smile. It's so negative.
You're like, so that's why it's
none of it's going to happen.
No, exactly. So for a multitude of reasons, it could be because the political climate is likely not going to have a Liberal government in the next vote, which means a lot of this is just not going to happen. Other reasons too is just because the complexity of getting dollars down to the provincial, municipal levels, they have to change their systems, rules, laws. It's complicated. And the other neat thing that is getting a bit of a buzz, I'm going to get your thoughts on this. The federal government is saying, look, we've got lots of office space. We're not using it. Postal offices is a big one. We're just going to either lease it out and rebuild it for apartment units.
Which they do now.
Sell it. What do you think?
No, which they do now. I know I had a lovely client a few years ago who worked for the provincial government and negotiated these land leases with the developers. Right. And there are strict, they have a piece of, tons of the waterfront in the East End were built that way.
And I think they still are land leases, and you have to be careful when you buy them, because if there's condos that are built on land leases, we won't go.
Oh my God. And I feel like every time we have an episode, we come up with another episode.
Yeah, because land leases, people don't realize that that's a problem. It's essentially, in my mind, a depreciating asset. One piece of real estate that's depreciating. Anyway, go ahead.
So, and they were only allowed to build if they built a certain amount of special assisted accessible units, low income housing units.
Yeah. Those strings are attached. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I feel like, analogy is you go to your parents and you're like, okay, I need to borrow some money, right? Yeah. And they're like, okay, we'll loan it to you, but it's not just to go to anything. We're willing to give it to you if you do this, this, and this. And I can appreciate that they are not just going to hand it over to a builder to say, just go and build the cheapest, crappiest building you're going to have that's going to have small little units and no one's going to be able to afford, and there's nothing redeemable to the whole density issue. I just don't think that any of this is going to. I think that the government is on a spending spree tour to win votes right now. Right. I have a client who has a piece of land in Toronto. He is planning to build a condo building on that piece of land. We have been talking about that project. I'm not involved, but I've been talking to him about it for 2 years. They're just getting closer to getting approvals by the city.
And that's part of what the money would go to. Like he's saying, remove that red tape to make those processes faster. How? I don't know. Because like how do you change a municipal process, right?
And that means you have to have that city be on board with it, right?
Correct. And that's the missing piece here. Like, right. It sounds great and I like the idea, but like how? Another piece of the how, they want to double from record amount of housing starts, double how many housing starts we're doing. Fantastic. I like it. I want that to happen.
We need more housing.
But we've never had so many people working in the construction space, like as a total portion of our overall people working in construction in the history of Canada since 1946. So we have more people than ever.
That's a really interesting statistic.
Working in construction.
Or part of development, you mean?
Yeah, like in the construction. I believe it's actually, let me make sure I have my data right.
It's actually really interesting.
In the construction industry.
Because we were saying like the biggest problem during COVID was actually that there was no people. No one.
And what I think it is.
That's why they weren't getting developments done.
I think it's skilled trades, meaning we have lots of people. My dad came to Canada, he was a bricklayer. You don't have to have skills for bricklaying. You got to be willing to work brutal hours, right?
You have to be good at it, though.
You have to work brutal hours in dangerous conditions that would not be allowed today. But, point being is that I think we get a lot of unskilled labor, and the immigration that we have coming in doesn't really match with what we need. But yet still the biggest portion ever since 1946 is working in the construction space. What I thought interesting is that his budget turned its mind to the fact that we still just don't have skilled labor. But so I just don't, and he did it by like funding skilled trades and apprenticeships and all that type of stuff. Will that happen and work? I don't know, because what I'm trying to understand and I don't understand is that if we have so many people already working within the space, why do we need more people? Like, what's the gap? And I don't think that's properly identified, and I don't think we know.
But we also have this is like related, unrelated. He also just cut the international student quota down by half, I think.
Yes.
So those people were also getting work permits automatically, and so were their spouses. Yes. It's all these. I was like, I didn't know that. Yeah. No wonder. And they were like, oh, I go to ABC University in a strip mall in Warden Avenue.
It's a big problem.
Huge problem.
Because those schools advertise themselves. I've been speaking with many Uber drivers about this. Like that school advertise themselves as being a place where I can guaranteed get a job. The government I'll definitely get a job. And it's just
they're driving an Uber.
Yeah. And unfortunately, some of them even are in trades that we need. But the problem that's missing is that, so they will take these courses for electrical, this, that, and the other. But this is what these, I'm being told, and N1 is not a trend, but nonetheless is that they come here, they take these courses, but nobody wants to hire them because they don't have experience.
No, it's for sure.
So
and there are people who are you see them as PSWs and they have, we're getting totally off topic, but it's a very interesting conundrum, because there are people who have engineering degrees from the countries they're from, and they're very educated, and they want to work in their field. And again, going back to the red tape, but yet they're
driving an Uber.
They're driving an Uber, they're working in 7-Eleven because they just can't have it. And that's a shame, where we do have literally a shortage in skilled workers in many, many aspects. But anyway, okay, so what other wonderful things do you have in that notebook?
So we talked a little bit about how the government's going to be giving up land, and they're going to be converting what is office space into residential, which apart from it potentially being a land lease, which I don't like from an investment standpoint. We can talk about that at another time.
So they want to convert office buildings into,
and that's actually,
by the way, there's some really good ones. 1231 Yonge used to be an office building.
No way.
Yes, in Summerhill, right on Yonge. Great building, very well run. And it was, however many years ago, used to be an office building. It was converted.
It's expensive to do. And that's why I'm like, how is this going to work? Another thing that I thought was,
well, who's going to do it and who's going to pay for it?
Yes.
And then who's going to, and then who gets to afford that?
And then also who's going to, for sure, that piece, but then, so if you like partner with a developer, they're going to have to make a certain amount of income from it. And a lot of these things are attached to, but it has to be for like affordability. But you can't make it, like the reason why it's not affordable in Canada is because it is expensive to build. We don't have, so unless you take care of that expense piece, I don't really understand how it's automatically going to be affordable.
1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
Exactly. So the final one, which I thought was so fun, I wonder how many people are going to take advantage, and I really do mean that word, of this. Money going to nonprofits to buy buildings to convert them into affordable units.
So I'm a nonprofit. I work for Baycrest, or no, that's a hospital. Okay, like the Diabetes Association or something. So we've got a nominal charity, and I'm going to get money from the government to
low cost loans.
So, okay. So they're going to give them money
to buy property.
Which they probably could get anyway. But anyway, okay. Yeah. So they're going to get it at a lower interest rate. So it's not 4%, it's 2%, let's just say. And they're going to, why would a charity want to buy buildings? Because they want to have a nonprofit rental building?
I think so. Like Women's Habitat, like I don't think
that.
You'd be like, well, what about Women's Habitat? Well, I actually volunteered and worked with Women's Habitat for years. No, you don't want to have a branded building because these women are fleeing domestic violence and they want to hide. So like, I don't really know exactly.
How do they justify that? What was their like sell job on that?
I didn't dig into like the logic.
I feel like it's like, what else can we come up with?
It could be because
and we ran out of ideas. So that sounds like, no, really, that's what it sounds like.
So I think it's because, this is the thinking, likely because nonprofits cannot make a profit. So they're probably thinking nonprofits wouldn't make the units profitable. So they'll run.
So why do they want to do? Like, I'm not saying you have to do everything for profit, but if you're a charity, your whole point is to okay, you're raising money towards the cure for diabetes. Great. Okay. So now I want to buy a building, and I want to house the people that have diabetes. I'm serious. Is that a bad thing to say? I'm trying to understand.
Like, trying to make it work.
No, but I'm like, square peg, round hole. Like, I don't understand why.
So I think people are just going to create nominal charities out of this. And I think what happens
with that's a scam. But that's a scam.
Yes,
okay,
with
so
nonprofits, I can now
I'm a
pay
builder
myself.
And I've got
I can pay myself $500,000. It's a little bit of a question mark, right? Like, do you have to be an established nonprofit? And
this is why they make it 600 pages, because like, really, like, who's even going to find this to even say what a ridiculous idea it is?
Yes. So all in all, the supply side, a lot of things that have already existed and have been in existence for a while. Like, for example, as we talked about, money going towards a building specific purpose. It hasn't been taken advantage of in the past. I don't know if this is going to change anything. I'm curious, like the only thing that I found like, oh, that could be interesting, is just the government selling more land. Because to unlock more land. I think that was probably the most interesting.
To make more money, to maybe
to provide more supply, just provide more supply. So
which is interesting because they said that I'm making these numbers up now, but like something like this. So we're in like $33 billion of debt, Canada. And they say that they've extended it because, I don't know if you heard, but budgets balance themselves. So they don't. Anyway, so apparently we found out they don't. So now they've extended that deadline. And now they say by 2025, we're going to be we're tripling it. We're tripling the debt. We're now going to be 93. Again, I'm making these numbers up, but the premise is correct. We're going to be $93 trillion in debt. But if you elect them in 2026, we'll have a surplus. Crickets. I mean, like, I'm not a mathematician, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm just really curious how they're planning to make it all work.
I feel like taxes might be a part of it.
I mean, I don't know how many more taxes they want to put on us, because we've got inflation going up. And we have to remember, obviously, that inflation is the rate of change. It's not the price of goods.
Right.
And I think that's what everyone's like, oh, inflation's going up. Why are my groceries still like expensive? And it's like, well, because they're not going. What goes up, unfortunately, in this case, does not come down. So as I was just saying, I think it's $1.80 at the gas pump. So, the reality is it's becoming incredibly expensive to live in Canada. I think the last report that I saw was that it was more expensive than Miami or New York to live in.
I don't doubt that. And that's why, again, like, this is all about housing and affordability. And the question is, like, how did we get here?
No, but it infuriates me. Like, I think that people see this, and we'll talk about the purchase side of how they think they're letting everybody know they're going to make it easier, but it doesn't trickle down. And it was very similar to, what Trudeau proposed of creating this transparency for buyers and telling them that, there was no more blind bidding wars. And did that happen?
That never happened.
It never happened.
Because it wasn't relevant.
And we're going to talk about this on the rental side, but that's part of the next episode we're going to do about how now there's going to be transparency on rental rates.
But there already is.
Nothing.
But there already is. I could just literally go on like a variety of different apps and different platforms and be like, what was the rental history?
Well, and the sad part is they're like, well, it'll protect newcomers to Canada, which, yes, absolutely. Someone new to Canada, yes, could, let's say, doesn't know how the system works, whatever. No one's renting to a newcomer. I hate to say that. It has nothing to do with age, race, nothing whatsoever. They have created such a system in which, unless you could afford to buy a house and that's financially secure, it is next to impossible to get a landlord too. Anyway, we'll do a whole other episode on that. But that's where I get so frustrated, because people like us are boots on the ground helping these people get into homes, and then you've got, the boss who comes in and sweeps in and throws around these shiny toys that are going to go nowhere. No one can use them. It was like that. It was that first time home buyer? I can't remember what he called it, but it was really, really misleading. And it was basically a program that they offered that maybe four people, not 4%, but 4 people would actually get approved for, and they shut it down earlier. What do they call it? I had a client who literally reached out to me and said, oh my God, did they shut down the first time home buyers rebate? And I'm like, no. It was the first time home buyers program. That's what it was called. And they would give you.
Is it funding towards put your?
But you had to give it back to them or something.
So
and it was never ended up ahead.
It's like an equity share model. So
yes, it was an equity share model to get into it, but you were not ahead at the end.
No,
they were the only ones that profited from it.
So what they would
and no one used it.
They'd give you a certain amount of funding to put for your down payment, and the idea was that when you sell, we take X% of your profits, right? And so everyone's just like, no.
It sounded good, right? It sounded like they were really going to help people.
Because these models do work, but how they set it up, from what I understand, it was complicated. It was like for you had to make under a certain level, and
you had to make very, very, you had to be almost at the poverty line even. It basically what happened was, if you lived in Polo Park, if you lived, no shot at Winnipeg, but if you lived in a very small town or county or something where you could afford, but you couldn't afford to do it in any major city. No. So it was useless. Anyway,
I think it's a good segue to the buyer part of the 3 buckets that he hit on. So let's talk about buyer, because I want to get your thoughts. Everyone's talking about 30-year amortization schedule.
So that was a big one when it came out. That was the headline, that they were going to allow first-time buyers to extend for insured. For an insured mortgage. So if you have an insured mortgage, it means that you have CMHC who's insuring it. You pay a fee to them to insure it, and it means that you have less than 20% down to buy your property, and it's under $1 million. Okay, great. So you could never go past 25. I think there was a time where it was lower, but they had extended it recently in the last bit of history to 25. So now they're like, oh my God, it's 30. I thought, okay.
It used to be 40.
Did it? They shut it down? Oh, I'm thinking of it the other way. Okay.
Yeah,
so now they're like,
many
okay.
years ago.
So now they're like, okay,
somewhere.
it's 30.
2008.
And even more good news, guys. You can also take up to $60,000 out of your RSPs towards your first time home. But by the way, you didn't read the fine print. It can only be on a new build.
I know. So this did
So
a couple
only
of
on
things.
a pre-con of a house or a condo, not a resale. So if you need housing now.
Exactly. So it sounded nice, but what I think he's doing is he's signaling to builders, I care about building. So I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you and compel or persuade buyers to now buy pre-con in order to give you builders the money that you need to build.
Well, because the pre-con whole industry is slumped.
Correct.
Tremendously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He read the room. Well, whoever put this together read the room, and that's what that's about. That's what it's about. Yeah. But this does not solve affordability today.
It also doesn't put people in homes today. I think his intention was to spark. First of all, intention was to get that community back on his side, right. And then 2 was to spark some kind of activity with the pre-con to get the numbers back up. Because as we talked about that in our other episode, I think, I don't remember if it aired or is airing, but there was a time when you would get invited to a friends and family event for a pre-con event, and that was gold. Like you were gonna kill it.
You were Beyonce. You were
literally
Swift.
like you had an in. You had an in.
Exactly.
And now they can't even finish off a building in a sales center. So
yeah. So that's what I think it was. I think it was.
And it's not going to do it. And it's not going to solve it.
Yeah, it was a covert way of saying, builders, we gotcha, and then trying to get people to buy pre-con because it is a slum place. But to your point, what does that do for today? Nothing.
No, he's trying to get reelected. And again, I do sound like I'm destroying Trudeau. But any politician who's coming out, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter. These are ridiculous offerings. They really are. And they don't solve anything. And I think that there are massive things that the government can do
like
to actually make. Well, how about the double land transfer tax in Toronto? That's one. How about the land transfer tax in Ontario? Period. I mean, I think that there's easy things that they can do to make affordability. And I know that, listen, bringing the interest rates down has massive implications, and I'm not saying that solves it. Right. But I do think that there needs to be they need to recognize that if they don't start easing people's pockets, we're going to have much bigger problems. Yes,
in fact, I could rabbit hole in that particular topic because I'm starting to see the cracks.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Just boots on the ground when it comes to people selling?
Everyone that I speak to is has a pit in their stomach. Even people who managed it properly, it's not even there's the affordability issue. My first time buyers, it really hurts me. I watch them, you save up $100,000, $150,000. I mean, in this city, for what it costs to live in this, for someone to say, I've saved $150,000, that's crazy, right? So now you've saved all this money and you're like,
I can't get it.
Okay, no. And you get a mortgage, you've got a good job and you're like, okay, I got a mortgage and I can spend $700,000 and I'm going to go buy a condo and I'm going to live near this and I'm going to have a great time. And then you go out and see what you can buy and you're like, so it's tiny, it's a shoebox, it has no parking, there's no natural light, it's old, my maintenance fees are high, they're only going to go higher. I mean, it's crushing, it's soul crushing. So there's that. And then you have people who, I have a property coming up. This is, he's an affluent guy who's selling his home. He's gotten remarried, so it's a matter of just selling an asset. And he's like, I feel for the people who are going to come and buy it, knowing the price point that it's worth. And, we're going to put it out properly, market value, and it'll sell for what it sells for. But he's like, who's affording this now?
Even he's saying that.
But the point is, like you said, the people who own right now are going to end up becoming the majority of people who are buying because they've got equity in their home and they can take it out and they can buy up depending, I mean, in the same neighborhood or if you go north or outside the city. Yeah. But I think that being someone on the outside, I do this every day and I look at it like I had a client, well, okay, if you have $1 million mortgage, right? Yeah. What am I paying? What are my monthly fees?
Oh,
right?
You're going to go up to, if you have $1 million with up, like, it's like $8,000 a month.
Okay, so it can be as high as $8,000 a month, yeah. Okay? So $1 million. You can't buy much under $1 million, okay? You're going to be mostly in a condo, depending where you are in the city.
Oh, I'm talking about $1 million mortgage.
Yeah, no,
okay,
I know.
Okay.
So then you've got, you want to be in a good school district? You want more than 3 bedrooms? You're over $2 million. So now, let's say you buy for 2.5 and you have $500,000 put down. Who's got $16,000 to be going out every single month for a mortgage? Yeah. And pay for their kids and put money, like money on their table. It's literally putting money on the table.
And save.
And
your retirement, because let me tell you.
So that's actually one of the biggest concerns a mortgage broker said to me the other day. He says,
I'm very concerned about that.
Very concerned. He said, it's not about them paying their mortgage. They're all going to get in, think about the numbers, run their numbers, do their due diligence. He said, but when are they going to start putting a little bit of money aside to have RSPs? I remember it was like we all maxed out our RSPs. I'm the generation, I'm much older than Natalka, but like we were maxing out our RSPs. There's no money for these kids. No. So this is where I get so upset because these politicians come on their soapbox and they're like, we're going to do all this stuff. You're not helping the average person. You're not. And people buy into it.
And that's what I hope the fine print is read. I wish that it would be very easy to delegate dollars down to the provincial and municipal levels.
No,
and we
stop
could just
giving it to the government. Give it to the people. Give them some kind of tax break. And listen, the first time home buyers rebate is a great one. Right. That's a really great one. But there's got to be something else that it's an immediate money in, you think about charities and you give money to the charity and then where does that money actually hit the person that needed the food on their table or put a roof on? It's the same thing. This money, it gets thrown in. I was listening to this great podcast yesterday and it said, so the federal government just said they were going to give money to infrastructure, right? Yeah. So they're going to help with it. Okay, the provincial government also pays into infrastructure. The city taxes, the buyer pays a land transfer tax to pay it. That's how badly this is all run. There are gazillions of dollars going into and every single level.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the last bucket? In the supply, there was another supply one.
The supplies would be
supply we did, buyers.
And buyers we've basically done.
The only other thing, again, this irritated me, as you can tell the whole budget irritated me, was that they were, and I am obsessed with laneway houses. I was on breakfast television about it. Ben Gom, who builds laneway houses, is my buddy. I love the idea of this turning your home into an investment, so again, people who, and this is becoming an issue also, people who are getting older, they have to stay in their homes longer, don't want to move into a condo. How do, maybe I want to travel. How do I paid off my mortgage. How do I so I've had this conversation with my husband. I'm like, what if by the time we retire, we create a basement apartment in our we're not here. We've got money coming in now. Maybe there's someone who's keeping an eye on the house or putting the garbage out or whatever it is. And so this morning he sends me, he's like, oh, we were just reviewing the budget with the team and look at this. And again, $40,000 towards another dwelling in your home. But the fine print was that it's a low interest loan. The people who need to put that in to make the money, who really need to do it, not like this is financial planning for you, okay? Need the money. Just have there be some kind of grants.
Yep.
Well, all this money that you're gonna get from land leasing your properties across Canada, granted to these people.
Yes, like if they
Give
have a
it to
certain
them.
income or what have you, so that obviously it doesn't like get abused and what have you.
No, don't let it be the like COVID, like everybody over 60 gets $100.
Yeah.
My friends' parents who were like millionaires, they were like, we got $100 in the mail. I'm like, anyway,
Government's great.
I think the only thing we didn't touch on was the tenants. That was the last bucket, but we are going to talk about that in our next episode. So now that my blood pressure is high, I'm going to say it's over now.
She needs whiskey for
There is a bourbon in my future tonight for sure. Anyway, thank you as always. That was
Fantastic.
amazing.
Well,
and thank you for your notebook.
always.
Handy
Let's
dandy.
see how it plays out. I'm curious.
It won't play out. It's not going to play out. Nothing will play out.
Optimism.
And that's it.